was a dark and stormy night, nor'easter rolling in. It's a long 12 hours, the power's out again. I pray for inner strength and that we don't lose no lives. Just another day in the first responders' eyes. Half a cup of coffee's gone, the first run comes in. A car slid off the road, there's a family trapped within. My heart beats like a hammer, I can barely catch my breath. I'm thinking the worst and hoping for the best. Yeah, we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. It's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this burden when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on when those sirens are gone.
Hey, welcome to the award-winning Mad Radio Show with John and Sam. We are here to heal our heroes. It's your First Responders Network. Welcome, Sam. How are you doing today?
Hey, John. Doing great. How are you? Well, I know how you are. I have to ask. Do you know what time zone you're in?
Yes. Finally, a little jet lagged. Coming back from the UK was just an amazing trip. Met a lot of first responders. And matter of fact, I found out that, challenge coins mean something, and people take a challenge coin, they'll put it in their pocket, they'll say thank you and walk away. Well, I was with a firefighter from the Fire Riders Motorcycle Club from the Netherlands. And you know how we're exchanging pleasantries. And I hand him a listen challenge coin. And he says thank you, doesn't really look at it too much, but looks, doesn't comprehend it too much, but puts it in his pocket and walks away. Comes back about maybe 10 minutes later, and the guy's bawling. I mean, just full of tears. I'm like, it's a challenge coin. It's really no big thing. He goes, no, it was the words on the challenge coin that meant the most to me. I said, I will listen. He goes, will you? I said, of course I will. And we sat for the next 45 minutes talking. And he was sharing with me his traumas that he faced as a firefighter, 20-year veteran of the fire service in the Netherlands. And, how the department has the man up or get out kind of mentality. And he was been struggling for a long time with the stress of the job, and he's got nowhere to vent it. So he finally broke down and said, okay, I'm not a man. I need help. He went to his department, and they scheduled him an appointment through their EAP, because they don't have what we have here. So he gets an appointment. 6 months it took him to get this appointment. I mean, that's crazy. Guy's battling 6 months. Took him to get the thing. So he finally goes, and he says they put him in an office on a couch with a 25-year-old therapist just out of college, just got a degree. And she's telling him on how she understands what he's feeling.
Wow. Okay. So besides wanting to smack her,
he got up and walked out. And, I couldn't stress enough. I said, it's important that first responders go actively seek help, but you got to make sure the help that you're seeking is the proper help. That's the most important in getting any type of post-traumatic stress therapy, is that you are seeing a professional that not only has experience in the battle trauma or the first responder field or veteran field, whichever you're in, because they're two different animals, but knows what post-traumatic stress in a first responder mental status is. And this person didn't, they're like parental issues and everything else, and very domestic stuff and sexual abuse and everything else. But they're not well skilled. So I beg all our first responders out there that are listening, it can become very, very frustrating sitting on a couch in the first place. To have a therapist that is not trained in what you need could really make things even worse and almost make you want to give up on therapy. I was on 3 different couches before I was lucky enough to find somebody who understood. I need you to make sure that go by recommendations from other first responders. Do your own vetting. Research the person, please, because this almost ended this poor firefighter's life because he got improper training, so improper help. So very, very important to everybody who's out there.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and in fact, it was one of the topics I was going to talk about with our very special guest tonight. I'm going to let him tell the story. Equal frustrations that he talks about going to see somebody and has a terrible experience, and it doesn't. It certainly, we have this dance that we play, right? So we know we need help. We don't want to ask for help. We've got this stigma out here. When we finally get up the courage to ask for help, we have the situation that you just explained. And we start wondering, my God, it is like everybody like this? And the answer to that, John, you and I, is absolutely no. There are incredibly skilled people out there that get the first responder brain, and we'll just beg you, if you're in that, see, your dogs even agree, John.
My dogs agree.
Yeah. If you're in that situation right now where you've tried it, and it is a try, you tried it once, it didn't work out, please don't give up. Like we tell everybody, if you need a resource, easiest thing is to go onto abadgeofhonor.com. I'm just going to put this up here real quick since we're talking about it. Go to this website, go to our website, and scroll down to resources. You click on the logo, you get a phone number, you get a person's name. You can go ahead and call. And I think this is actually a perfect segue to get into what we're going to talk about tonight, because it does take courage to heal, big time courage. And we couldn't be more just happy. I'm having a hard time finding my words tonight, because
honored.
When he said, yeah, let's do the show, I was like, oh my God, I know he's so busy. He talks all over the United States. He's an incredible advocate for post-traumatic stress injury and first responder suicide prevention. And he just wrote this incredible book, and it hit #1 on Amazon right here, Relentless Courage. We have the author with us tonight, retired police officer and veteran Michael Sugrue. Welcome to Mad Radio.
Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Mike.
Now, you started your law enforcement career back in 1998 with the United States military. You were part of a very elite Air Force. It's the Air Force Special Forces, right? The Ravens. Do I have that correct?
No, they're not special forces, but they're a subset of security forces.
Security forces, okay.
Security forces is basically the military police of the United States Air Force. And the Ravens are a subsection of security forces, but they're not the caliber of special forces. So I want to make sure that's
okay.
Clear. They're not I misread. Or Green Berets or anything like that.
I misread.
You're like a SWAT team for the MPs.
Something like that.
Okay. All right.
There you go.
We'll go with that.
There you go. Well, after you got your feet wet in the Air Force, and you knew you wanted to stick with law enforcement, you got hired on soon after you left the you did your time at the Air Force in 2004, right? and you got picked up by is it a small department, medium department, Walnut Creek Police?
So in the Bay Area, it's considered probably a medium-sized department.
Okay.
It's Walnut Creek, but it's about 15 minutes outside San Francisco. And so in the Bay Area, we've got tons and tons of police departments because there's a lot of different cities. And so back when I was working, I believe we had about 86 sworn officers, about 120 employees altogether. I think that number's grown a little bit, but it's considered a medium-sized department in the Bay Area.
Now, Walnut Creek, okay, medium size. It's got kind of like a Walnut Creek is not what people think about when you think about crime in the city.
Got like that suburban.
It's a
got
very
that thing.
suburban area. Can be a little bit sleepy at times. In general, quiet. And here you are. You're a new police officer, and boom, it's on. Let's dive right into trauma, because that's what we're talking about. That we're all about healing our heroes in first responders. Because again, the book Relentless Courage, #1, folks, you got to pick it up on Amazon. Winning the battle against frontline trauma. Take us through that night.
So, prior to this night, I was involved in numerous traumatic incidents like all our first responders are. And I can literally remember back to my first couple of weeks of FTO. And I had a couple of very traumatic incidents, which I go into detail in the book. But fast forward through all that, eventually I promote to an FTO, and then I'm a detective, and eventually I'm undercover on a state drug task force. And so this big incident happened when I was a brand new patrol sergeant. At this time, I'd been on the Walnut Creek Police Department for about 8 years. So 8 years sworn time. My shift started the day after Christmas. And literally a couple hours from going off duty, we got a call of a woman and a male barricaded inside a condo. And there was a subject with a butcher knife that was trying to kill them. And that incident is the incident which forever changed my life, changed my path. And, I look back now, and I don't know that it's that incident, but what it is I didn't deal with and address all the incidents before that incident. So this was more or less the tipping point. It's the incident that pushed me over the edge. And the way I equate it is it's kind of like a jar if you want to think about it visually. We start our careers out. There's a few things in there from childhood, from growing up. And then as we go throughout our career, the jar keeps filling up with these traumatic incidents. And if we don't talk about it, we don't deal with it, which we don't, because that's the culture and that's the stigma. We don't talk about our feelings. We don't talk about emotions. We pretend like nothing bothers us. And if we don't address that, this jar eventually is going to overflow to the point where it's too late. And in my case, I waited far too long to ask for help. And that actually almost cost my life.
Well, let me ask something, Mike. Let's rewind a minute. Because I didn't get a chance to read the book yet, but I will. The Air Force as a Raven. All right. When you say we all had childhood experiences, and when you were a Raven, how was the military back then handling any type of post-traumatic stress within the security forces that you were in?
I'll be quite frank with you. It's not to the level that it is today, but I also look back and none of my post-traumatic stress comes from the military.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
all of my post-traumatic stress actually comes from my civilian law enforcement career. And that's not to say that it doesn't affect our service members, because it does in a huge way. But just for me personally, I didn't have that kind of exposure that I had on the civilian force. And I think a simple way to think of it is that, a lot of military people, when they go off to combat or they go off to hostile zones, they're in a known danger area for a defined period of time. And then they eventually leave that area and they go back to their homes or their bases where things are fine, things are safe. And you're not on duty 24/7. When you're military police, you're on duty on the base, but when you're off and you're not on that base, you don't have any powers. You don't have any authority. Your head isn't on a swivel. But on the civilian side, we're literally in combat every single day.
24 hours a day.
Yeah, for 20 to 30 years. And especially if you take the climate now with all the anti-law enforcement movements out there. We have to watch our back, not obviously on duty, but also when we're off duty, when we're with our families, when we're going home. So there is no downtime. There is no full relaxation. We're always on edge. We're always on guard. And there really is, I think, a big difference between military law enforcement and civilian law enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to highlight it. You had talked about how this incident changed their trajectory of your career. It changed how you looked at your life, what your life meant to you. And one of the things that John and I talk about a lot is that connection to family. Like you've got to have some release valve. And when I was reading the book, I found it very interesting because this is so, I'll say, cop of us. We want to shield our family from what we experience for numerous reasons. Okay. You did the same thing after this incident. You were up for like 24 hours. You had to give a statement. You just wanted to get home. You wanted to sleep, and you wanted to tell your wife. And in the book, you say, I made a decision that I'll always regret. I decided I would not tell my wife what happened. I had almost died. And as a result, I was struggling with an overwhelming fear of dying. I was having panic attacks and nightmares. I didn't want my wife to have that fear.
Absolutely. And I actually made that decision back in the police academy, and it was a conscious decision. And looking back now, like you said, it's one of the worst decisions I ever made, because we need to establish open communication with our families and loved ones. And I'm not talking about sharing all the gritty details of what we're involved in, but when we're having a bad day, we need to make it clear that it's not our family. It's something that we dealt with at work that day. Right. And we may need some time to decompress. And, we should talk to them about what happened. Again, not in super detailed fashion, but just say, look, I went to a fatal car accident today. I literally saw somebody die in front of me, and it's really affected me. And so I just need some time to decompress. But I didn't do that. And the thing is, if you don't establish this type of relationship and communication in the beginning, when that really big incident happens like mine did, it's too late. I mean, literally, it's too late at that point. And so if I could teach one thing out of anything, that is, you are not protecting your family by not talking about the job. I mean, I really believe that in the first part of my career. I thought I was doing that, but you're not protecting your family.
Well, that was the culture.
You need to make them part of it, and they need to understand it, because let's face it, our spouses and partners, they're making so many sacrifices for us. I mean, being married to a first responder is like nothing else. And they're making sacrifices every single day while we're working graveyard shift. We're missing the holidays. We're missing all the little league games. I mean, we're missing all the big events, and they're carrying the load at home. Yep. So we need to bring them into the fold and let them realize what exactly it is that we see and we do. And that's part of this book is, let's show the human side behind the uniform, behind the badge. Let's talk about that. Let's be transparent about this.
Yeah. And you also, you have affectionately, she goes by Doc, but Shauna Doc Springer, she's a PhD. She unpackages your stories really well and can explain it. So if any spouse wants to pick up the book, they'll understand. It's heartbreaking to read what you went through, but the way Doc Springer explains it's like, oh, okay, and this is how I can support my first responder spouse. So it gives them a glimpse inside your world, and a way to also bridge that gap in communication in case your first responder isn't talking and something happened, because we can't hide anything from social media. Right. It's in our living rooms, whether we want to deal with it or not. Now, back when this happened, you rationalized to a point where you were like, well, we got to go to trial because this whole thing blew up. You ended up going to trial, horrible. And you thought that maybe if, your wife, you brought your ex-wife now, but you brought her to the trial to see and hear everything, that she would get it and that everything would just be okay.
Well, actually, to correct that, so we are already almost divorced by the time the trial hit, but she actually came to the coroner's inquest, which was the first court
Right, okay.
proceeding, and that was about 6 months after my shooting. And you're right. So at this point, I hadn't told her what happened. I hadn't been talking about it. Our marriage is falling apart. I mean, it's going downhill fast. I'm isolating. I'm drinking, and I invited her to this court proceeding because I figured if she can be there and literally hear it all, hear everything, maybe she would understand why I was being such an asshole. Maybe she would understand why I was being so distant and I was so disconnected. But the problem was, by this point, it was already too late when it came to our relationship. So the fact is that it didn't matter at this point. I hope that it did, but it didn't matter. And I didn't get that support that I was looking for and that I needed so much. And so that was devastating for me. I mean, literally, I felt abandoned. Like I had no support system whatsoever. I felt like I was on an island, and the scariest part was, and you mentioned this earlier, is that the reason why this incident forever changed me is because up to this point, for whatever reason, I had a feeling of invincibility. I felt like nothing could touch me. And I had been on very dangerous undercover task force assignments. I mean, we're doing high risk entries, sometimes multiple times a day, several times a week, guns out, putting people on the ground. But for whatever reason, this incident really made me fear dying. It made me realize that my life could be taken in an instant. And all I could think about was my young daughter at the time, that she wouldn't know who her father is. And she wouldn't know how much I loved her. And that was the scariest part about this whole thing, is not being here for her.
Yeah, you talk about your daughter a lot in the book, and again, thank you for that's part of the relationship. People need to read about that. They need to see it. That first responders, we don't have S's underneath our uniforms. We're regular people that have families. We have feelings, and you went through a period where things got super dark after that breach of trust, and I'll go back to that in a moment, but focusing on your daughter, where you were like, all right, if I die, I die, but suicide and taking yourself out, you thought about that, but it was the thought that you also brought alongside of it, thinking about your daughter and what that would do to her, that change that trajectory a little bit for you.
Yeah, it got to the point where I didn't want to be here anymore. So I didn't have a plan to actively take my own life, but I did have a plan to die in the line of duty, because I figured if I died in the line of duty, I would forever be memorialized. There's no way that my daughter would ever not know who I was or forget about me. And so I literally put my officer safety, my tactics aside, put my officers in jeopardy and put myself in the line of harm's way. It's the opposite of suicide by cop, but it was hoping for suicide by the bad guy. And
Taking
that's
high
what I'm
risk.
looking for. Absolutely. And
Taking high
it
risk.
happens all the time. We don't talk about it, but how many officers decide, you know what, I'm not going to wear my vest today? Or, you know what, I'm not going to wear my seatbelt in my car, even though I know I should, and I'm going to drive as fast as I can to this call. How many times does that happen where it's a on-duty incident,
Right.
but in reality, it's a suicide that's masked?
It's funny you say that about the vest thing, because that just, and I haven't thought about that for a long time until you brought this up. You know how things trigger your head. My memory is shot from everything, but I remember a couple of times going out on a high risk search warrants, and my partner would always, and he'd be like, "Where's your vest?" I'd be like, it's all good. But in my mind was thinking the same thing. And now going back, it's like, man, I was battling, and I didn't even really see it. And that's the scary part. A lot of our officers, a lot of our law enforcement do not see the battle signs. They're not because it goes back to the back pain syndrome. We get used to it. we either mask it. We're in the type A personality where we have to be in control. We don't let that down. And once if we let that down, we're out of control, and that's not us. So we always put that control factor involved, like the big red S, and we don't realize we're battling inside. We mask it so much, even to ourselves, and we don't see the people that we become.
Absolutely. And, we haven't talked about this yet, but the number one killer other than COVID, which was an anomaly the last couple of years, year over year, it's suicide. And the facts are that we are much more likely to die by our own hands than the hands of another. And when you think about that, I mean, how many hundreds, thousands of hours do we spend over our careers training at defensive tactics,
Right.
firearms, emergency driving, arrest and control techniques, right? We spend countless hours to protect ourselves from the enemy, when in reality, we're much more likely to kill ourselves. And we're not talking about that. We're not training it. We're not preventing it. And that's the number one killer of not just law enforcement, but all first responders.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to make it a priority. We need to make ourselves a priority.
Well, like you said, it goes back to the very beginning in the academy, and even bringing up your wife. And me and Sam have talked about this numerous times, where the academy's got to bring in the family and say, this is what you should expect, and not some 2-hour IAB kind of thing. It's got to be a nice block, an 8-hour block, to show really what's going on in the police department or in law enforcement, what the changes to expect and how to address them. A lot of our family members do not know how to do that. They don't know how to address. They don't know how to start that conversation. Because we take things out on the people we love. So we're not going to take it out on our partners or our commanders. We're going to do it when we come home. So there's the anger issues, the isolation, everything. And then our spouses are left wondering and not know how to address it.
We come home and we treat them like suspects. We treat them like people we're interviewing on the street. And the thing is, we always have the solution on the street. We know what the problem is. We know how to fix it. And we tell people, look, here's what's going to happen. We're taking control. Here's the solution. But guess what? It doesn't work at home that way. It's a relationship, and you need to communicate, and you need to be open and honest and vulnerable. And that's the key to this whole thing. Is vulnerability is really the key, because when we go home, we need to let our guard down and not worry about this image of being invincible when we're on the street in uniform. We need to be true to ourselves and true to our feelings. And if we're going through a rough time, we need to be able to verbally express that to our partners so they can help understand it and we can get through it together.
But we're not trained to do that. We're not trained to open up. And you're in Walnut Creek, right?
Yes.
Now, I was in New York City, so we until I got into the other assignments, before I started taking a car home. You park the car, you get it in patrol, you go down to the locker room, you change out of your gear, right? Put it in the locker, and then you get into your own personal car, you go home. A lot of these officers are going home in uniform with their patrol car. So their mental mindset is, my day's not over. When they walk through that door, it could be their home or it could be a suspect house, because their mental mindset is they haven't even stripped down the uniform before they walk into their own relationship, into their own home. Absolutely. I don't know how that was with you.
Yeah, for us, we didn't have take-home cars. I always changed at the station. I never wore my uniform home. And I would say that most people in my agency, they did the same unless they had take-home cars. But, depending if you work in the same city you live in, or if you have a short commute, there is no time to even decompress or even kind of prep yourself for your family. I mean, it's like you're leaving work, now you're at home, now you've got the home problems. And that's the thing, is that, the public, I mean, it's common sense, but they don't realize that, like, we deal with all this crap and trauma at work, but then we have our own problems just like they do. Health issues, financial issues, marriage problems, cancer diagnoses. I mean, you name it, we're dealing with all that on top of all the work stuff.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Right. You walk in the door, she's screaming about the kids and schoolwork and this broke, and you're like, whoa. Your head's just starting
Yeah.
to explode.
Absolutely. And that's why we got to communicate. We got to communicate on both sides. And we kind of alluded to this earlier, but when Sam mentioned about the book, a spouse or a family member can pick it up. But the reality is that anybody on the street can pick this book up. I don't care if you have any affiliation with any military or law enforcement, you're going to see law enforcement, first responders in a whole new way. And I've actually, I did this. So the gym I work out at, I hit up like 5 guys I didn't know. They have no affiliation with law enforcement. If anything, they probably had a bias against law enforcement. And I told them about my book, and they all bought it. And I ended up meeting with these guys individually. And we sat down, and they opened up to me about their perceptions, about how they grew up, about how they view law enforcement. And every single one of them said that this book changed their entire perception of law enforcement.
Wow.
And actually made us realize that we're human just like them.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. Yeah. Cause that's our truth. Right. And let's let's go a little bit deeper because, I was talking about in the beginning of the show when we were talking about the firefighter in the Netherlands who went to get help, complete just utter failure there. Didn't trust the system after that, and is kind of like trying to find his next place, if you will, with all the encouragement to talk, to keep talking, to keep figuring it out. And part of I'll say I don't know if the increase in feeling the trauma or feeling of helplessness was the breach of trust that you went through with your own department. And, your leadership abilities, literally, and you're on the force, you're doing everything, you're FTO, your record is impeccable. And your leadership abilities get called into question because you showed emotion, like genuine emotion during the trial, and they questioned whether you were genuine or not. And I had to actually stop at this part and read it again because it was so mind-boggling to me. And then I had to take a step back and be like, oh, no, I get it, because I've been through the same thing. Not with the being called into question during a trial and my emotions, but my abilities to want to stay on the job. It was all about money. I was a dollar sign to them, And here you are, being a real human being, doing something that is so difficult. And guys, I'm not we're not going verbatim, like exactly all the facts in the book. We want you need to go out and you buy this book to really fully understand and capture everything. But after that, it was like, well, F you then. Then F you. I'm just going to come into work. I'm going to keep my head down. I'm not going to say shit. I'm just going to do like what I have to do to get by and screw everything else. And that's like the worst place that we can get, because not only do we suffer, but the other people around us suffer.
Absolutely. And this pivotal moment that I talk about in the book is where I should have had the strength and courage to ask for help. And I didn't. I'm a prior military guy. And if you outranked me, it was yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And so I sat there in this office with my administrators and I just took it. And I made a conscious decision, like you said, which was I'm not going to show emotion ever again. I'm not going to show this weakness that they're saying I have. And basically I put up this front where I was suffering on the inside, but I wasn't going to let anybody ever see it, because if I did, that to me was going to be the end of my career. And that's the tragedy in this whole thing, is that if the culture doesn't allow us to ask for help, why would we? I've spoke at countless agencies across this nation, and some are much more progressive than others. But I went out to the Midwest, and after I spoke, I had a few officers lined up that shared some personal stories with me, and they were literally outcasted when they asked for help. Not only outcasted by their peers, but outcasted by their administration. And so this is happening much more frequently than we think, and it's happening everywhere. And that's the thing, is if I'm an officer and I see my friends suffering, then I see them ask for help, and then they get shunned and outcasted, why would I ever in a million years, after I see how this person's been treated, ask for help and put everything on the line? And the thing is, this is supposed to be our family. These are supposed to be the people that have our back to the fullest. And the thing is, they do until they don't. And I really thought this was family for many years. And it just takes that one time where we need our family the most, and they turn their backs on us. And that is moral injury. That's trauma on top of trauma, or administrative betrayal. And that is what pushes people over the edge oftentimes. It's not the trauma. It's when they're struggling, they're suffering, and they feel like they're on an island. And then their family just turns their back on them, and they see no other option. And that's what pushes people over the edge.
Well, they don't understand the ripple effect that has. You know,
absolutely.
They alienate you, or they treat you like or shun you, right? Another officer or other officers see that, they understand that, and they're like, whoa, I'm not doing that. Just like no one understands in New York right now the ripple effect from those two officers being shot and killed in California. Even though those guys don't know each other, that ripple effect goes through across the nation, and it affects every single cop, every single law enforcement officer throughout the country, because they lost two brothers, even though they didn't know them.
Absolutely. And it's that realization that we can be killed at any time. You know, I remember when those 4 Dallas officers were killed, I was on duty. And I remember after that happened, we had to double up, because we didn't double up at our agency, and we doubled up for, I think, like a week or two. And I mean, talk about being on edge. I mean, that happened thousands of miles away in a different state. But the realization was, it's just a reminder that, yes, this can happen at any time, any place. It doesn't matter where you work, where you are, your life can be taken in an instant. And it's just that realization every time an officer gets killed in line of duty, it's that reminder that, yes, we can be killed. But the thing is that we still every single day suit up and put on our vest and put on our belt and go out there and put our lives on the line every single day for complete strangers. And nobody else does that.
Nope. And we stress that every workshop, you know, because certain people go, well, you have a 5,000 man department. I only have a 200 or 400. Well, then we look at Uvalde, Texas here, where we have a 6-man department, right, who went through a mass shooting. And you hit it on the head, Mike. It could happen anywhere, anytime. Doesn't matter if you're in Mayberry, BFD, 2-man department. If you are wearing that uniform, you are subject to the same exact traumas, feeling the same way, and the same threats that every law enforcement officer goes through. You are part of that. And the administration doesn't look at it that way. They go, we're only a 6-man department. We're only a 5-man department. We don't need that. Yes, you do. Every officer needs it. 900,000 sworn officers across the country need it. And, you know, your book, and I hope every officer throughout the country grabs your book and reads it and learns from it.
The book's going to save lives. I mean, it truly is. And the format of this book, it's never been done before, as far as I know. And it's a very unique format where, you know, there's tons of chapters. Every single chapter is 2 parts. And the first part is my story told in my voice all the way to childhood till now. But then it's Doc Springer's insights and analysis and explanation. And when people are going to be reading this, they're going to see, oh yeah. It's going to resonate in so many ways, because we all go through similar incidents. We have the same feelings. We have the same effects. And you don't have to be in an officer-involved shooting. The fact is that, like you said, if you work in Mayberry or you work in New York City, you're exposed to hundreds of traumatic incidents over your career.
Yep.
And we're human, and they're going to take a toll. So let's acknowledge it. Let's normalize it, and let's just talk about it.
Change the culture.
Absolutely.
Have to change the culture.
Yeah, and that's what more and more, you and us and a lot more retired folks are deciding that, first of all, I still have a purpose
Yes.
and I still have a tribe. And I'll tell you, we've got a big tribe out there with a huge mission, and it is to absolutely smash that stigma so that any of our brothers and sisters can get the help that they need, no matter what it looks like. You've spoken to a lot of officers that have gotten burned. I've spoken to a lot of officers that have said, because they didn't want to get burned, because they knew that it was the suck it up mentality, they went outside their agency, they used their own insurance, there was no trail whatsoever. Great. Whatever it takes, whatever you need to do to get yourself well and not allow these traumas to compound. So again, we talk about that release valve where you keep the valve open and dripping, just like in the winter. We don't want our pipes to freeze. So you keep it dripping so that you can weather the storm. And in addition, if you have a really good therapist, you walk out of your healing process, your journey, battling here with tactics and tools that you can use to deal with, when stress feels overwhelming, or to deal with a flashback, anything that goes along with the injury that goes along with post-traumatic stress. That's the key. It's not just sitting down and on a couch and talking to somebody, because you can do talk therapy all day long. You're just reliving the event over and over and over again. It takes active therapy to really get through the tough stuff, because I think on average, through the life 25 30 year career, I think I read something the other day, on average it's like between 600 and 800 traumas, depending on the size of your department where you are. So if you're in a large city like New York City, like Chicago, the statistics are not in your favor. So you might as well, right out of the academy, be aware that because statistics are not in your favor, you better get up and in front of the traumas that are they're coming. It's inevitable.
Sam, the big departments, even the small departments. Think about this for a second. Even just putting on the uniform. If you're in a department that's got 6 people in it, right? And the thing that just happened in California, your mind is a constant hypervigilant threat on a threat level. And once it's like that over a period of time, it is so hard to even get out of that mode. That means so you may not be experienced trauma, you may not be in a shooting or see dead bodies, or go to those multiple car wrecks, or visualize see anything. It's that mind screw, that putting on that uniform, that I could be killed at any moment, any time within my tour. Think about that for a second. Even the small departments, your stress level is huge every single day. That exhausts your brain right there.
Absolutely. And, there's so many resources out there, which I didn't know about any of these until I started my journey of recovery. And that's one thing I want to mention here and now, is that in the back of my book, there's a list of numerous resources. There's completely anonymous hotlines and text lines, which are only for either law enforcement or firefighters. Again, 100% free, 100% anonymous. There's week-long programs like West Coast Post-Trauma Retreat, Save a Warrior, Mighty Oaks Foundation. I mean, literally, there are a lot of resources out there. And the thing is, we don't know about it. We don't talk about it. And so in the back of this book, there's many that are listed back there. And I encourage people to take a look at that. And, start out with just an anonymous text line, hotline. Talk to somebody who gets it, who understands it, where it's trusted, it's confidential, and there's not going to be any negative repercussions for your career or for anything else, because it's 100% confidential. They don't even know who you are.
Right.
They,
you
they
can
don't
tell
post,
them.
They don't post that stuff. They don't post that stuff in the precincts or in the commands. We're visual based, right? So when like we were talking about, and I'm going to throw out that resource, cop line, right? That number should be every front door, everywhere, right? But cops don't know about it because they don't see it. They don't know about it. And they don't know about the resources because commands are not posting it and showing it and offering that help.
Exactly. And many of these are free, and they're going to absolutely save your life. And it's like, why aren't they putting this out there? Why isn't it plastered on the walls and posters and other things in the locker rooms or in the garages with the cars? I mean, you know,
the
some of these
barbecues, the precinct meetings, the meet and greets at the bar. Those are all posted, but not anything to do with mental health. And
it's the number one killer, right? That's the one thing we got to address that we're not.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're in June is PTSD Awareness Month, and you just brought up the West Coast post-traumatic, the West Coast post-trauma retreat. I'll say you utilize them as part of your journey to get well, and what I love is that you're now a peer volunteer there. So first of all, if it's anything like what I say, they saved you. They gave you skills, tactics, and tools to keep you going, and now you get to give back and help others.
Absolutely, that program saved my life. I mean, absolutely saved my life. And you know, when I go back, I mean, I'm there to help and assist and give back, but I'm also still getting something out of it. And every time I go back as a peer, I see the clients within a day or two literally transform from closed off, shut in, not willing to talk to anybody, to literally sharing stuff in an open room with people they just met. In some cases, things they haven't shared their entire life. I mean, like severe childhood trauma that they haven't even shared with their spouses or their siblings or anybody. And somehow within a day and a half, they have the trust and the comfort level to actually get this off their shoulders. And that's the key to this program and many other that I mentioned in the book, is realizing that you're not alone. That's key to this whole fight, is realizing that, see, you've got on your shirt, is that you're not the only one feeling this way. You're not the only one suffering. In fact, there's countless brothers and sisters out there just like you, many who have gotten that help and come out the other side. And that's the thing, is I'm living proof of that. I'm living proof that you can be in the darkest depths of your life where you don't want to be here anymore, and you can actually come out the other side and have a better life than you've ever had before trauma, before law enforcement.
Yep. Without a doubt, once you get taken out of that hypervigilant state of mind, start going back to your prefrontal cortex and start learning what life is all about. It's an awakening that people don't even realize.
Absolutely. And I look at people differently now. I used to be a very black and white person. You know, when I was undercover on a state drug task force, you got dope, you're a dirtbag, you're going to jail. But now I realize, you know, working with a lot of cops who are addicts, who are alcoholics, it's because something happened that led them down that path. It's not because they're bad people and they're choosing this bad behavior. It's because it's a, you know, illicit comforting mechanism. And that's what we do, is we turn to alcohol, drugs, extramarital affairs, gambling, porn addiction. All those things are okay, but yet it's not okay to talk to our partner and just be open and vulnerable. I mean, that's our culture of first responders.
Right.
Yeah, you know, that's one of the big things that John talks about at our workshop is, you know, we've got to, for folks that are listening that are still in the job, we've got to pay attention to our own partners, to the people that we call our tribes, our brothers, our sisters, because it's not enough to say, how you doing? Because how will we respond?
Doing
I'm
great.
Good. I'm fine.
Good. Exactly.
Right, exactly.
We know the script. We know the script.
Exactly.
So we let ourselves off the hook and say, well, I asked if they were okay, and they said fine. What the challenge that we put out to folks, and that you do in the book as well, is the challenge of the follow-up, is to challenge the I'm good, to challenge the fine with, and this is the beautiful part about, you know, Doc Springer, I'm just going to read it right out of the book because it's brilliant. So somebody says, how you doing? I'm fine. Really? Because I'm noticing a change in you that reminds me of times when I had some serious mental battles. And then you explain a little bit, I've been there. You're really important to me. And there's nothing I wouldn't do for you. So, what gives? What's going on? Let's talk.
That's awesome.
Right
that cracks the book. That
right
that
there,
cracks the door right
page 201.
I got to get the book. I'm going to order the book.
Yeah, I've only been asking him, Michael, practically smacking him upside the head with the book. I said, you can't take my copy because I need it for the Mad Radio.
Exactly. And you won't be able to put it down. Once you start, I guarantee you won't be able to put it down.
But that follow-up question is amazing because that really cracks the door open, and it's not putting any pressure on the person who you're asking. You're putting the pressure on yourself saying, I was there. This reminds me of.
You're normalizing it.
That is an amazing script right there. I like that a lot.
Well, and the key to that whole thing is
those letters after their name.
Absolutely. But the whole concept there is just be vulnerable yourself. If you start the conversation by being vulnerable, and imagine if our leaders did this, imagine if our chiefs and our captains, our lieutenants, and they brought that officer in who they know is struggling, instead of just saying, are you okay? Is everything good? But started that conversation by saying, hey, I want to let you know about something that most people don't know about. But, 4 years ago, I was losing my marriage. I was drinking way too much. You're sharing a personal story that opens that door, that trust and that comfort level that says, oh, wait a minute. Okay, they're telling me that this is normal. So now I feel comfortable sharing. So you have to have vulnerability. And if you initiate that with your own vulnerability, that's going to save countless lives. Absolutely.
We actually met a chief. We were doing a workshop. We actually met a chief who came into the room while we were doing our workshop and did that exact same thing. And me and Sam were just blown away. We were like, wow. And actually,
then he spent 2 days with us.
Yeah. I mean,
when we were out there. Yeah.
And you could see, because we've done a lot of workshops with many different departments, you could see the difference in the officers when a chief is like that has an open door, really comfortable attitude. You can see a difference in the officers than those who have chiefs that are very closed up, and it makes such a big difference.
So I got to tell you a quick true story here. So when we had this manuscript done before the book was published, we sent it out to law enforcement leaders and military leaders across the nation, and they give us really nice written endorsements, which are inside the book. They're on the back of the book. And I actually reached out to an active chief. I'm not going to say where, what agency, but a large agency in the state of California, and talked about the book, and I wanted them to read it. And I shit you not, this chief told me, look, I don't know if I should read this because I don't really believe in this. I think most people are making this up. In fact, I think there's officers in my department right now that are milking this and making it up. So that's the reality of what we're dealing with. We've got quote unquote leaders out there who think this is all BS, who don't want to acknowledge that this job does involve suffering. And so that's the uphill battle, but the chief you talked about, I know some chiefs like that, and the culture of their agency, the health of their employees, it's off the charts. But this other agency I just told you about, officers are leaving in droves. They're off on physical injuries. They're going to other departments because there's no leadership.
Sick out, high call outs, the whole bit. And getting on to that chief that you just talking about, if he says people are milking it, and granted, there are that small percentage that will try to milk the system. In anything, they're going to try to milk the system. And I look at
Eric Adams.
and I look at it like this. If I pass a homeless man, right, who's got a sign that says homeless veteran, right, I could automatically perceive him as he's a drug addict. He's just milking the system to try to get money. Or I can look at him and go, hey, he's a homeless vet who can't pay his bills. He's having problems. Let me give him $5, right? So either way, right, either I can just let him be homeless, or I can give him $5 and help him out. I have to look at that as, if it helps him, God bless. If it doesn't help him, then he got over on me, who I'm okay. You know what I'm saying? And the chief should look at all those people going, you're not milking this. You're really battling. Let me try to help you. And if they're milking it, they're milking it. There's nothing we can do about it. Stop being so pessimistic. Look at your officers as guys that are battling.
There's a lot more that are not. Because who would want to deal with it?
It goes back to what's in our brain. We're profiling. We're judging books by their cover. Mike, as well as I do. You're on the street. You see a black guy. Oh my God, he's selling drugs, right? You profile him because that's the culture you're in. I was in an all-black neighborhood, but you know what? That's what you would do. He's got saggy pants. You're going to go out and frisk him. Not the case all the time. You can't do that. You have to look at people for who they are and not what your perception is.
Well, you have to know your people, and you have to genuinely care. That's the key. You have to truly care about your people and not look at them as a number filling a position, but you have to look at them that they've got a wife or a husband, they've got children at home who they need to be here for. And you need to think about the fact is that if you shun them or push them away, there's a good chance they might kill themselves. And you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life. And you're going to have to look in the mirror every single day and know that you could have made a difference. And I'm going to tell you right now that this year, there's been like 4 police chiefs in California, retired police chiefs, that have killed themselves. And think about that. Again, because the chiefs are suffering too. They're people just like we are. They're not perfect, but they put up this perfect chiefly image. And that only lasts for so long. But if we all are vulnerable, if we're all human, and we just make it normal, we don't have to make this a big deal.
Right.
We don't. We just make it part of our culture that it's okay to talk about stuff.
Absolutely. So I'm looking at the clock. Yeah, we know you have a time deadline here. Real quick, we have some comments. If they order the book on Amazon, can they get it inscribed? Like, do you have the ability to put an autograph or something like that?
So we're only signing books at basically when I do speaking events or book signings.
Okay.
So what I would say is definitely get the book and keep an eye on my social media sites, which we'll go over. And I always post upcoming speaking events or book signings. And I will always sign books at any speaking event I'm at. I mean, I'll stay after and sign everybody's book if I have to. So that's the best way to do it. But as you can imagine, we've sold thousands of these books. And if everybody wanted to mail me their book and then sign it, and then I'm driving to the post office, oh my gosh, like I would be spending half my day every day going back and forth to the post office. So as much as I'd like to sign everybody's book, it's not possible. So,
well, you have to come to Dallas to do an event. People are saying come to Dallas. Thank you, Candace, for putting the link in the comment stream, because as this is reposted, the link will be there in the comments as well. Again, folks, the book title is right on the screen here. Relentless Courage, Winning the Battle Against Frontline Trauma. Michael, first of all, how do people reach out to you? What are your best ways to get you on social?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on there every single day. It's probably my biggest platform. I'm always checking messages, but I also run a couple Instagram and Facebook pages, and they have the same name. So the first one is First Responders First. And I'll say that again, but First Responders First. There's a Facebook and an Instagram with that name. But I also run a private Facebook group, which I monitor every member, every post, and that is open to any military person, first responder, family member of one. So I encourage you to follow those pages and join that group. And the other one is Sergeant Michael Sugrue, which is also on Facebook and Instagram.
Is Sergeant all spelled out? Or SGT?
SGT.
Okay.
And my name's pretty unique. So I know there's some like lecturer and some photographer, but if you just type my name in, you're going to find it. So just type in Michael Sugrue and you're bound to find it.
All right. I got it out there. Okay.
One other thing I just want to, before you go, me and Sam were talking about this the other day, and I got to give kudos to the person who did the cover of your book.
Oh, yes. Wow. So let me explain that story real quick.
Mhm.
So it actually started out with my vision with a photo. And the guy in the front of the book is my best friend. He was the best man at my wedding. He's actually an active police officer here in the Bay Area. We work out every day during the week. And so we did a photo shoot
Yes.
in an old military tunnel right there, overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge. And then there's this famous artist. His name's Daniel Sundahl. He's actually an active paramedic in Canada, but he's a phenomenal artist. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to bat for the star. I'm going to just shoot for the stars here. I'm going to reach out to Daniel and see if he'd be willing to turn our actual photograph into art. And without hesitation, he did. And I'm going to tell you right now that he designed that entire cover, and we didn't change a thing. That was his vision, and it turned out phenomenal. And so kudos to him.
Let me tell you something. Online, you really can't get the power of the picture. But when Sam showed me the book, I was like, man, I'm getting chills. It struck me because you could see the hands, and it's a powerful cover. And man, the online version just does not do that book cover any justice. It was amazing. Kudos to Daniel.
Oh, he's amazing, and he's saving lives every day. Absolutely saving lives. So
he is. We had him on the show twice actually, and he is what he is able to do with the photos and there's even words in it. Again, guys, you got to get the book to see all the detail we are talking about, because when I opened it up out of the package when it came, like John, you don't see it on the preview picture. I opened it up and I said, oh my God, who did this cover? And I'm flipping through and I was like, oh my God, it's Daniel Sundahl. So it's really, it grabs you. And it is well, you know, if you've been through the shit like we have,
plus
that cover says it all.
And it's an easy read, because when I started reading the first couple of chapters, because my reading comprehension really sucks. It really does. It's horrible. And as soon as I open a book, I'm like, oh, this is perfect for me. I can really read it.
Thank you for making it spaced the way it is, and the text the way it is.
You make it easy for knuckleheads like myself.
You made John's day when I showed him that.
Well, we want everyone to read it, but we know how first responders are. So like you said, it's double spaced. It's big lettering. So don't let the fact that it's like 300 something pages scare you, because you can literally read this book in 5 or 6 hours. I mean, you will blow right through it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for taking the time to be with us tonight, for sharing some of the story. Again, folks, go out and get the book. You will not look at law enforcement the same way. And if you're a first responder, get the book, because it goes right along with healing this stuff. And the resources at the back, perfect. So you truly are not alone. Don't let that stigma stand in your way of really getting the help that you absolutely deserve. And with that, Michael, again, thank you so much.
You, Mike.
You know, we'll come to Dallas, please.
Yeah, I want to come. I love Texas.
Absolutely.
I spent a lot of time in San Antonio when I was in the Air Force. So, hey, if there's somebody that wants to bring me out there to speak, by all means, send me a message. I'm down. I love Texas.
We'll work on it. That
sounds awesome.
Great.
We will. Okay, until next time, we will be in touch. Thank you so much, Michael. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Stay safe.
Take care.
Good night. Woohoo! Oh my gosh. Powerful. Again, folks, the book title is right here. Relentless Courage, Winning the Battle Against Frontline Trauma. It's a game changer. God bless you. Michael's speaking engagements are game changers. And like he said, like we have seen personally, there's a lot of folks out there that say people will milk it, that PTSI isn't real, that people just need to get over it. Oh, you know, embellishing and all this. It is absolutely real. Okay. This is real. like you need to come to grips with the fact that there are folks that will take advantage of any situation, but 99.9% of the folks out there are needing help. The trauma is real. The numbers speak for themselves. I mean, the science is out there. It's undeniable what first responders go through. And as upper management, you have an obligation to your folks. You want to be the best leader that you can be the best leader by showing them you go through the same stuff that they're going through. And I guarantee you, not only will you have a better department because of it, but you will have the loyalty 100% through and through from your folks. So again, guys, go out and get this book. Easiest way is to go and grab it on Amazon. It is the number one selling book on Amazon right now.
Judy Lamp's online. She's gonna get the book. She even said it not's been through it, but wants to understand what it's like. And you don't have to be a first responder. Judy's helped many first responders and veterans just by understanding and learning and getting yourself knowledge on how to do things. So you don't have to be a first responder or a veteran to get the book, like Mike said, and I'm sure Judy will definitely purchase it because it just gains her more knowledge in helping the people that she's helping.
Amen. It's all about learning and continuing the journey. So thank you so much. Hey, we want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, for all of law enforcement out there, first responders listening. We pray for you every single day. You are on our hearts and our minds, and you have a lot of people out there that are pulling for you as well. So stay strong, stay in the game, and like Michael's book says, have the relentless courage to get the help when you need it. Don't stop. Keep asking. For our veterans, thank you. Because of you, we get to do this every week. God bless you all. And for our active duty military spread out all across the globe, thank you for keeping enemies away, keeping us safe here, our shores safe. We pray for you as well. And God bless all of the first responders down on the border. You are not forgotten, and keep doing what you're doing. Stay strong, stay in the game. Help is on the way. I know it doesn't seem like it is, but every day the tide is changing. There will be a turn, and we're here for you. So reach out. John, take us home.
I'm just going to turn around and say, to our brothers across the pond who don't have the resources, to the firefighters in the Netherlands, and to everybody else that's out there, one small change, like handing a challenge coin to somebody, can change someone's life and change someone's perspective. Be that change. Make that moment in time for somebody else, and you can change their whole trajectory of their thought process. So that's it. And if you could be anything in this world, just be kind.
All right. We'll see you again in July, folks. July 6th is our next show. Until then, appreciate your support. Good night, John. Have a great one.
Good night, Sam. Take care. Bye.